بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أجمعين. Inshallah, today we're going to be having our first session of our study of the Tafseer of the Qur'an. And inshallah, today we're going to be focusing on the first 1/3 of Juz 1. So inshallah, we're going to go straight into the Tafseer of Surah Baqarah, inshallah. Straight into Tafseer of Surah Baqarah, inshallah. The first thing that I wanted to relate to all of us about getting together for the purpose of knowledge, especially for the study of the Qur'an, is on the authority of the Prophet ﷺ, when he said, and this is an authentic narration, مَجْتَمَعَ قَوْمٌ فِي بَيْتٍ مِّن بُيُوتِ اللَّهِ يَتْلُونَ كِتَابَ اللَّهِ وَيَتَدَارَسُونَهُ بَيْنَهُمْ إِلَّا نَزَلَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ السَّكِينَةُ وغشيتهم الرحمة وحفتهم الملائكة وذكرهم الله في من عنده. And we all know this famous hadith about the virtue of gathering together for the sake of reciting the Qur'an, for the sake of studying the Qur'an. And here the exact translation is that there is no time when a group of people get together for the purpose of studying the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And actually it says in the hadith that there's no nation or people that gather in one of the houses of the houses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning the masajid. So it's specifically referring to gathering in a virtuous place, for gathering in the masjid. And alhamdulillah, Allah has blessed us with that opportunity. Not only are we studying the Qur'an, but we are also studying it according to the hadith in one of the houses, the masajid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there is a result of this action of ours. There is a direct impact that actually comes from the heavens because of this idea that we had, this plan, this intention that we had to get together and recite the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and study it among ourselves. What is going to happen? There's 4 things are going to result out of this idea that we had. Number 1, sakina or tranquility is going to descend on us, inshallah, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is one of the things that he has promised us. One of the things that the Prophet ﷺ has guaranteed us through this authentic narration is that sakina, tranquility, is going to encompass or descend rather. Nazalat, yani it's going to descend from the heavens, from up above. وَغَشِيَتْهُمَا الرَّحْمَةِ, and rahmah or mercy is going to envelop us. Ghashiya, yani it's going to be like all around us. We're going to become enveloped in this mercy. وَحَفَّتْهُمَ الْمَلَائِكَةِ, and the malaika, the angels, subhanAllah, they're the most honorable creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of the most honorable creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because they do nothing except worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They have no other desire to do anything else other than the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which makes them so honorable. And they right now are attentive towards us because of the fact that we have become attentive towards the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and its study. So this is a huge honor that right now the angels are surrounding our gathering. وَذَكَرَهُمُ اللَّهُ فِي مَنْ عِنْدَهُ, and this of course is the crown reward of this whole endeavor, which is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is actually mentioning us among those that are near him, those that are close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yani it's not just a general mention. Those near ones, those ibad, those creatures that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has close to him, fi man indahu, those that are with him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to be mentioning us in our study of the Qur'an before them. So keeping this perspective in mind, this great honor in mind, it's going to help us overcome the difficulty that is obviously going to confront us trying to come in every day. It's not easy, obviously, to come every single day for such an extended period when the children are home and there are other challenges according to everyone's condition. But this is why we want to start with this hadith, so we can, inshallah, remember these benefits that no other endeavor will give you. Whatever reason that will keep you back from coming, it's not going to result in these 4 things. But coming here will give you, these 4 things, and this is a great honor. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all the tawfiq and shawq, and the yearning to be part of these gatherings and not miss them, inshallah. Okay, now inshallah we're going to go straight into Surah Baqarah. That's because I wanted more people to be here for the tafsir of Al-Fatiha. And because these are independent sessions, inshallah we can do them, I think it'll take a few days for the numbers to improve, and then inshallah we'll have that tafsir as well. I haven't forgotten about it. Okay, now let's inshallah begin with a little bit of background to Surah Al-Baqarah. Obviously this is the longest surah in the Qur'an, right? longest surah in the Quran. And it's named Al-Baqarah not because it discusses the subject of the cow, not because it's about the cow or the benefits of the cow or the nutritional, aspects of the cow. It has nothing to do with that, obviously, right? The reason why, some of the scholars have given on why we have surahs in the Quran that are called the cow or the ant or the spider, Al-Ankabut, Al-Namal, Al-Nahl, Al-Baqarah. Why do we have these? It's because the themes are so vast within the surah that it's not possible to find a title that would be comprehensive enough to reflect those themes. They're just too many and they're too comprehensive in nature. So what is done is that one item or one object that was mentioned in those surahs is taken as a symbolic title to be the name of that surah. So this is what the ulama have said in this regard. Okay, now since this is a Madani surah, one thing that I want you to keep in mind about Madani surahs is that they were not revealed in consecutive order. Makki surahs are short, so it's obviously, when a surah like Surah Al-Asr is going to be revealed, the verses are going to be revealed one after the other, right? This is not the case for the longer Madani surahs. So what you had at the time of revelation is different verses from different parts of Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah Al-Imran, all these long surahs. They're being revealed, and later on, the Prophet ﷺ directed the scribes of the Qur'an to put this verse here and this verse here. He later gave the order of the verses in the surah, okay? But this is not how the surah was revealed, okay? It's not that it was revealed in the way that we read it today, okay? And that's a feature of Madani surahs. So inshallah, we could just keep that in mind. So how do we know then, if it is the way that I just explained it, then how do we know if something is Makki or Madani? If the verses are all scattered and it's not chronological. The way that the chronology of the surahs is determined, the chronological order, is determined based on the opening passage of the surah, okay? So if you read, for example, the first few verses of Surah Baqarah, based on this, of course, not us, but the Mufassirin, or when the Qur'an was compiled together, the chronological date was determined according to the opening passage. That gives an idea of what came first and what came second, according to the context, the theme, the subject matter. The Mufassirin were able to decide what the chronological order of the surah was. Now it's very interesting also to keep in mind that it wasn't just when Surah Al-Baqarah was being revealed, it wasn't the only surah being revealed. There were actually different simultaneous revelation of multiple surahs going on at the same time. So subhanAllah, this is another a miracle from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He directed the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to place these verses in this surah and these verses in that surah. This is from divine command. It is not, no person can come up with the order of the verses and what surah they belong to on their own. You will find later on with the compilation of the Qur'an that there was some intervention from the part of the Sahaba in determining which surah comes after which surah, okay? But that is limited only to surahs or chapters of the Qur'an, not the verses. The order of the verses within each surah and which verse goes in which surah is only from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's divine, from the Prophet ﷺ as he was commanded by Allah. So don't confuse that with the ordering of the surahs, okay? That we will find, you will read when you read about the compilation of the Qur'an, that Uthman radiallahu anh, for example, he put At-Tawbah and Al-Bara together, for example. So that's just something very interesting to keep in mind about the actual verses and how they were compiled. And how do we know that this, when you listen to all of this and it seems like so much going on at the same time, how do we know that this is the order that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants, the present order of the surahs of the Quran? It's because when the Prophet ﷺ would recite the Quran to Jibreel in Ramadan, he would recite it in this order, the order that we have today. He would recite it in chunks, in large chunks, and it would be recited in the order that we have it today. And this would be done by the end of Ramadan, right? Start at the beginning of Ramadan and finish. Now, it's very interesting that Surah Al-Baqarah, which is a Madani surah, it comes right after Al-Fatiha, right? And we know that Fatiha, even if you don't know anything about the Tafseer of Fatiha, everyone knows that it's dua for guidance, right? Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim. Show us the straight path. So the fact that Al-Baqarah is placed right after Fatiha makes perfect sense if you look at the opening passages of Al-Baqarah, right? Which we'll do right now. بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Because it's recording, inshallah, I'm just going to recite it plainly. I'm not going to say it with the tajweed. Alif Lam Mim ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين. Okay, so right here, the first line says that Alif Lam Mim, this is the book of Allah. There is no doubt about it. It is a guidance for the pious people, right? So this is the answer to the prayer for guidance, right? So it just makes perfect sense that Fatiha, we're asking Allah for guidance, and right after in Surah Baqarah, Allah says, okay, here it is. You asked for guidance, here it is in chapter 2 in Surah Baqarah. So this gives us an idea of what's about to come. That means a lot of ahkam, regulations for the perfection of that guidance are going to be given to us, and that's exactly what will happen in Surah Baqarah. You have guidance for all different aspects of life, social, economic, how to deal with different types of people in society, marriage, talaq. All of these things are usually interest. All these themes are going to be covered. So it's a very practical guide for guidance. It's not exactly the spiritual kind that we find in the Makki surahs, right? That's a different type of guidance, different type of inspiration. Here you find very practical guidelines for actually making Islam work. You know how a lot of times when people criticize Islam and how it treats women and other topics that are their favorites, they say, well, this is in the books, but what about the practical situation of the Muslims? What about the practical situation of the women in Muslim countries? Like, what's the reality on the ground? Why is it so different from what's available, what's in the text or what it's supposed to be like, right? So here, Surah Al-Baqarah is an example of how to make Islam work on the ground if we apply this. Knowledge is empowering only if it's applied, right? So here in Surah Al-Baqarah, we have those practical guidelines that in fact were implemented in Medina under the Prophet ﷺ, and we saw the flourishing of that state and in the Khulafa ar-Rashidin that followed them. So now, just so you have an idea of when most of the surah was revealed, it was revealed after the Hijrah, obviously, in the earliest stages of Madani life, when the small, state of, Muslims, which was Medina at the time, was in need of every type of guidance, regulation, laws, rules that it could get. And obviously this had to come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because they were under the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So smaller parts of Al-Baqarah were revealed later, and then they were added to it because of how it was related to the rest of the themes. Okay, so when other parts most of it was revealed in the early stage in Medina after the Hijrah, other parts were added later. Why? Because they had similar themes. The contents of the later verses were relevant and therefore put in the same surahs. For example, you have verses that prohibit riba, right? This is what makes usury interest haram. And the very last 2-3 verses of Surah Al-Baqarah, the famous, Amana Rasulu bima unzila alayhi min rabbihim al-mu'minun, right? The ending, famous ending, 284 through 286. That actually was revealed in Mecca. Those verses were revealed in Mecca. But they were placed according to the command of the Prophet ﷺ from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it the ending of Surah Al-Baqarah. So you will find those exceptions. Sometimes when we call a surah Madani, it doesn't mean that every single word was revealed in Medina, but it means most of it was revealed in Medina, and then later other parts, regardless of where they were revealed, may have been included in it if that's what Allah wanted, and that's what the Prophet ﷺ commanded. Now, one of the biggest challenges that the Muslims faced in Medina was dealing with other religions. In Mecca, it was just shirk, it was just idolatry, idols, gods, right? Fake gods. But in Medina, they had to deal with, Ahl al-Kitab, right? They had to deal with, especially the Jews. So they had no experience in dealing with them. And this is why a large portion of Surah Al-Baqarah is devoted to studying the Jewish people and their history. It's not to be critical, it's not that Islam, hates a certain ethnicity or a certain group of people. A lot of times the Qur'an is criticized, of course, by people who don't have a faith in it, don't believe in it, and say that it's anti-Semitic because of some of the things that will come up in the surah. It's unfair to say that because the group of people that are talked about in the Qur'an, in the Surah Al-Baqarah, is not all of the Jews. It's only Bani Israel, which was one clan from among the Jews that lived at that time, and they had done certain things which was something that other communities could benefit from, which Muslims could benefit from in the time of the Prophet ﷺ and today. This is why you have some of the stories of Bani Israel. So Surah Al-Baqarah is not a condemnation of all Jewish people for all times. That's unfair to say. So we should be careful when people are inclining to say those types of things. The problem with what was going on in Medina at the time, the Jewish community of Medina felt that deen was their privilege. It belonged to them. It was their monopoly in their mind, and they didn't need to do dawah. There's no such thing even today as becoming Jewish. You can't convert to Judaism, right? Even today, there's no conversion to Judaism, right? You can become a Christian, you become a Muslim, but you can't become a Jew. It's so, you see even today, the remnants of what the Prophet ﷺ was experiencing, which was, this deen is our monopoly, we don't need to give dawah, it's us, it belongs to us, we are the chosen children of God, right? This was the mentality that the Prophet ﷺ and the early Muslims had to deal with. So even when peace treaties were made with them, it was not beneficial, as we're going to see in our study of the Qur'an, because of this inner bias that was present in many of the people at the time. But of course, Islam, they had no choice but to give dawah, because our religion is, we like to think of it as an open religion where we have to invite people towards it. So the Prophet ﷺ, you will see in Surah Al-Baqarah, under divine command, is inviting the Jews to Islam. It's not like the closed religion where no one can convert to. It's actually the invitation is extended. And then of course we'll see what their response to that invitation was. So anyway, just to get a little bit more into the background, these are some general things to give you an idea of the background of the surah. The reason why you have so much of it directed to Bani Israel or to the Jewish community in Medina is because they had strayed so far from their path, even though they were a recipient of divine revelation, right? They had the Torah, they were given the Torah, but they had completely, changed it and interpreted it according to their advantage, according to their own interests, right? So obviously this is something, when you have a prophet of Allah, which was Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam at the time, a prophet of Allah cannot ignore something of this nature. This is why you have so much of Surah Al-Baqarah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is commanding this in the Qur'an, and why the Jews have been told to become attentive to this reality, to their condition, how they need to change it. Now, you're going to find a lot of detail in the surah, right? So we're going to have to be very patient in studying the surah. You have social, economic, political, marital detail in the surah. The legal problems, all of this has been addressed, again, in response to the fact that the Jews had lost this from their tradition. Everything had become watered down. They used to have a Sharia, right? Of course, every deen has a Sharia, or they're following the Sharia of the previous prophet, right? So they had a penal code, they had a system, but all of that was no longer being implemented because of all the inhiraf, all the deviation that had crept into it. So this is why, again, you have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealing the Islamic legal system, so that they can see that, now that you've left your way, the final Prophet ﷺ has come with his Sharia that you now have to follow. And here are the details. Here are the regulations that now you are also bound to come under. So again and again, we're going to see the theme of divine guidance over and over in this surah. You're going to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, calling the people, calling the Jews, calling the different sects within Medina to come and accept the call. Now, you're going to find a lot of hostility between Bani Israel. Like you'll be able to tell that there was no respect given to the covenants, the treaties, the alliances that the Prophet ﷺ tried to make. This is one of the first things that the Prophet ﷺ tried to do when he came to Medina, is to establish some kind of working relationship with all the different groups, even if they belong to different religions. And you will see that they were not honored. And that's why in subsequent surahs you're going to see the effects or the reaction that then happens from the Muslim community, or the instructions that they are then given after those treaties were broken. Okay, now other things that we're going to be looking at, there's a lot of halal and haram in this surah, okay? Qisas is also going to be mentioned, the death penalty, right? Fasting, jihad, hajj, family affairs, all of these things, marriage, divorce, trade, tijara, riba, all these things you're going to see in the surah. Okay, and there's also, right in the beginning, you're going to see a lot of things directly related to Iman, right? If you look at verse number 3, الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ وَيُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about the articles of Islam, right? The pillars of Islam. You have to believe in the ghaib, you have to establish the salah, you have to give out of the zakat, what Allah has prescribed, right? And believing in revelation, right? يُؤْمِنُونَ بِمَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكَ وَمَا أُنزِلَ مِنْ قَبْلِكَ, right? So you have both the pillars of Islam as well as the articles of faith, the practical actions as well as the aqidah, the actual faith system. You have both of that meshed in the very beginning of Surah Baqarah. So you see that the practical guidelines that are given to us later, they're actually, the foundation of that is what the surah begins with, is the actual iman. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the belief in the ghaib. Because if that's not there, then there's no inspiration, there's no motivation to actually carry out the exact details of, you know, the legal code, or the way that you're supposed to divorce someone, or that the fact that riba is haram. All these things become meaningless if it's not grounded in iman and faith in the one who sent these guidelines. Okay, now also another huge thing that we're going to see in Surah Al-Baqarah, obviously this surah has one of the longest introductions because it's the longest surah, right? So this, inshallah, you were expecting this. Ibrahim alayhi salam is mentioned a lot in this surah, right? Over and over again you will find references to Ibrahim alayhi salam, and that's because he was considered so honorable by the Jews. He was, you know, he was their forefather, or they took such pride in descending from him. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds them that if you're so proud of following Ibrahim alayhi salam, well, he was on the Prophet Muhammad is following the Millah of Ibrahim. In fact, the Prophet Muhammad your rejection of Muhammad also makes no sense, because he's following your forefather, right? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands the Prophet Muhammad to follow the Millah of Ibrahim, to follow the way, the path, the deen of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So you will find very logical ways to, you know, to combat the hostility that the Prophet ﷺ is facing from the Jewish community. And we can still use these today in interfaith dialogues. We can use many of the same tactics that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has presented in the surah. We can very effectively use them when we need to in talking to Jews, talking to Christians. It's a very effective way of giving da'wah. Now also the change of the qibla. The qibla change you will also find at the beginning of Juz 2 in Surah Al-Baqarah, which also symbolizes many things, which inshallah we'll get into once we get into the actual tafsir. Another thing that we're going to find in here is the detailed ibadat, the salah, the siyam, the hajj. All those things are mentioned actually in this surah, mandated. The siyam, for example, is mandated in the surah, right? Hajj is mentioned in the surah. So you see, and also other morals as well, like honoring treaties is given, you know, deep importance by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Justice, making things haram like gambling, okay, alcohol. Okay, all of these things you're going to find emphasized here. And then you will also have, of course, the concept of tawheed. It's very hard to find a surah in the Qur'an where you don't have some relation to emphasizing the concept of tawheed, the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You will also find that theme, as well as life after death, the akhirah theme, which is why you have the story of the man who was wondering while he was passing by a old destroyed town, how is Allah going to give life to this after he has made it to die? So what did Allah do? He caused him to die for 100 years, right? And then he brought him back to life. So see these very, you know, these real examples that are put in the surah to emphasize, imprint into our minds and hearts how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is powerful over all things, how he can cause the you know, dead to come back to life. So you're going to see, you know, subhanAllah, so many themes, so much encouragement to spend in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Infaq, this whole theme of infaq, spending in Allah's way, is again given importance, highlighted in the surah. And then the surah ends with, as I had told you in the beginning, of the dua for the Muslims, right? If you go to the end of that surah, of those verses, which is the end of Surah Baqarah, you're going to find a dua for the Muslim community, for the Muslim ummah, for asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to not burden us beyond what we can bear. And subhanAllah, and you know that dua is mustajab. We know from the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was told that you made this dua to not be burdened beyond what we can bear, and this dua was granted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for us, for the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What does that mean? That dua is placed at the end of all these regulations, all this halal and haram, this legal system, so many instructions. That means this is not beyond what we can bear. If someone says that, the rules of Islam are too much for me, well, we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not made it too much for us, because He granted us this dua, that He will not burden any person more than they can bear. So this is again a motivation for obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because it's all within our potential. It's within our capacity. Inshallah, we can all do it, and we could even, inshallah, ask for Allah's tawfiq to be able to implement all of these instructions, in ourselves, in our communities. Also, you will see taqwa is a huge theme in the surah. In fact, the ibadah of siyam, which we're going to enter into, which is mandated in the surah, the goal of that, taqwa, is mentioned more than 30 times in the surah, in one form or the other. And you will not find this in any other surah of the Qur'an. No other surah has taqwa mentioned in it so many times. Because again, if there's no fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's no way that you will have all these instructions implemented, all this legal code, this legal system put in place, if there's no fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, and even in the ibadat, the societal level comes later. Even the ibadat that are mandated, the salah, the siyam, the fasting, the hajj, how is that going to happen if there's no relationship, there's no taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So you will see this over and over again mentioned in the surah. And we're going to start now, inshallah, with the, and of course there's the story of Adam alayhi salam and Iblis, right? And this is, mentioned in different parts, and the progeny, the prophets, other prophets of Bani Israel are also mentioned, not just Ibrahim alayhi salam, but the story of Yaqub alayhi salam. When Yaqub alayhi salam is at his deathbed, what deen does he tell his children to keep following after him? And this is a direct, invitation to Bani Israel, that even your forefathers, Yaqub alayhi salam, his progeny, they were on this millah, they were on this deen. Yaqub alayhi salam made sure that his children were going to follow this deen after him. So what are you now following? What millah are you now on, right? So subhanAllah, we're going to have a lot of these different themes of iman in Islam, of prophets, of relationships, talaq, divorce, a lot of themes, subhanAllah, a lot of instructions going to be given, you will see inshallah in detail in the surah. Okay, now inshallah, with that, we'll begin. With that background in mind, we can now actually begin the tafsir. Okay, the verse number 1, Alif Lam Mim. Now these are called in Arabic huruf al-muqatta'a, right? You're familiar with this. And these are letters that appear at the beginning of every surah in the Qur'an. Not every surah, various surahs of the Qur'an, right? And they don't have a set meaning that we know of. They don't have a translation in any language. There's no explanation of them, no tafsir of them in Arabic either, other than the fact that these are letters, in English they're called disjointed letters. And one of the wisdoms that some of the Mufassirin have pointed out in beginning the various surahs of the Qur'an with these letters is that it is to emphasize how the Qur'an is made up of these various letters of the Arabic alphabet, yet you who deny it are unable to produce anything like it. So it's like the challenge in the Qur'an that is mentioned, we'll see in Surah Baqarah, to bring forth anything like the Qur'an, bring forth a surah like the Qur'an, or even a few verses. And of course we know that the opposers failed at every level. They're not able to bring a surah, they're not able to bring even part of a surah, right? That was like the Qur'an. So why do we have this huruf al-muqatta at the beginning? The Mufassirin said it is to emphasize how, look, the Qur'an is made up of these very letters that are part of your language. It's nothing foreign to you. It's nothing alien to you. Yet you are unable to produce anything like it. This, in and of itself, is a proof that the Qur'an is from none other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in fact, you will see that this was even used sometimes in pre-Islamic poetry and in Jahiliyyah. You know, there was a huge culture of poetry and prose before Islam in the Arabian Peninsula, and then they would actually even use these letters. Yet when the Quran, this is when the Quran was revealed, there was no objection to these letters. Alif, Lam, Mim, Ha, Mim. You see these in various places. There was no objection made to them. It was common to use this type of introduction or these type of letters in even pre-Islamic poetry. So there was no objection made to them. And at the same time, they show how no one is able to produce anything like the Quran, because it is these very letters that they were unable to use to bring forth anything. And when there were some attempts made, for example, Musaylim al-Kadhab, right, the false prophet, he tried to produce verses that he claimed was his Quran, right, his revelation, that he claimed to receive wahi, he claimed to be a prophet, and he actually made some verses in Arabic, tried to make them rhyme, right? One of them, if I can recall properly, Al-Fil, وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا الْفِيلُ خُرْطُمُهُ طَوِيلٌ. You know, it's so comical, you know. And if you translated it, it means feel, the elephant. What will make you know what the elephant is? It's khurtum, its trunk is long. And then he made another part which says its tail is short. Like, it was just so ridiculous that even the kuffar, the mushrikeen, started laughing at him. Like, even people who didn't believe, had no iman, even they started laughing at him. That, what are you trying to do? So there was no one who was able to ever seriously even imitate the Quran to even a dignified, acceptable level. It was just not possible to do. So ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. Okay, there is no doubt about this book, right? There's no doubt in this book that it is guidance. But even this sentence is conditional. Who is the guidance for? لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. So you see, the guidance immediately becomes specified or has a condition associated with it. It's not guidance for everyone. It's guidance for the muttaqeen. So here we see the first time taqwa being mentioned in the surah. We said that we're going to see this in about 30 times throughout the surah. Here's the first. Al-muttaqeen, this is from taqwa, right? The root word is taqwa. And muttaqi is a person possessing taqwa. And so muttaqeen are is the plural of attaqi, right? Or muttaqi. And so here, we see immediately that this book is only going to become a source of guidance for those who have taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, have fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then there are more conditions. It doesn't end there. What are the other conditions? الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ. Those people that have belief in the unseen. The Quran does not become a source of guidance for the atheists, right? For the agnostics. Why? Because they don't have faith in the ghaib. They don't believe in the ghaib. They don't believe in an afterlife, The atheist denies it, the agnostic is not sure. He's still thinking about it. So when you come to the Quran with those biases, it's not going to become guidance for you. That's why you have people who are professors, who have PhDs, who are on global media. However, they have no faith. Even after studying the Quran, they don't believe in it. If these prerequisites are not met, it should come as no surprise to us. It should not make us doubt our book. Because this is a crisis among our youth now, that they go to college without having a sound background in their own tradition, and when they hear all these objections made by PhD elite professors in all these universities, objections about Islam, about the various aspects of the Sunnah, they become shaken in their faith. And there are people now that are leaving, Muslims, young Muslims, that are now leaving the fold, leaving the faith because of these doubts that are being placed into them. If they had a basic understanding of just this part, of just this surah, they will know that the Quran can never become a guidance for these people because they do not believe in the unseen. And what else do you have to do to benefit from this book for it to be a source of guidance for you? وَيُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةِ. And they establish the prayer. يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةِ. They establish the prayer. So there has to be practical action along with the faith, along with the believing in the ghaib, along with having taqwa. You have to be establishing the prayer. وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. And you have to give a proof of your faith by spending in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There has to be that evidence that you provide, the burhan, the evidence, the proof that you give to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you are indeed sincere, is that you spend out of your wealth. Not just that, doesn't end there. وَالَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِمَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكَ وَمَا أُنزِلَ مِنْ قَبْلِكَ وَبِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ يُوقِنُونَ. And those that believe in that which has been revealed to you and believe in that which was revealed before you. So this means that they believe in divine revelation. They believe in this system that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not only is there, but He also has made a system for our guidance and for the guidance of humanity, and that He sends prophets, and that they receive revelation, which is instruction binding upon us, and that we have to follow it. So, this is a lot of belief. This is a lot of iman, if you think about it. And not everyone can have it, and this is why they do not benefit from the guidance offered in the Qur'an. وَبِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ يُوقِنُونَ. And they believe in the hereafter. يُوقِنُونَ, this is from yaqeen, which is a deep level of certainty in the akhirah. It's not just a theoretical, abstract concept that, maybe there is an akhirah, maybe there is a day of judgment. In fact, it is an ingrained belief. They have yaqeen in this completely. They have no doubt that indeed there is going to be a hereafter, and they believe in it with certainty. أُولَٰئِكَ عَلَىٰ هُدًى مِّن رَّبِّهِمْ وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. These are the ones on true guidance from the Lord, and these are the ones that are going to be successful. So if we can fulfill these conditions completely, thoroughly, then these are going to be the people. Then inshallah we'll be on true guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what is required. These are the prerequisites from benefiting from the Qur'an. And otherwise you will not be in this category that will get that benefit. Okay. Now, a word about the unseen. We don't have expertise in every field of knowledge, right? For example, the patient doesn't go to the doctor when the doctor prescribes a pill. Okay, you should take this. The patient doesn't say, I think you're wrong. I think actually this other medicine would be more beneficial for me. And you will never have this type of dialogue between doctor and patient, because one has expertise in the field, has access to the type of knowledge and training that you have not been exposed to. And therefore, we almost, some people almost blindly trust doctors, right? Whatever they say, what is it called? Doctor's orders, right? The doctor has prescribed this, right? And prescribed this, almost like mandated this, right? And a lot of times when we translate the ayah of Siyam, you believe fasting has been prescribed for you, right? It's something that's mandated, you have to do it. These are the kinds of words used for doctors. This is how much we trust and esteem them, trust their opinion. Now, what about when it comes to matters of the unseen? Who are the experts? The prophets. The prophets are the experts when it comes to telling us about matters of the ghaib, matters of the unseen. Why? Because they are privy, they have access to that knowledge which we do not have access to. We have not been chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His direct revelation. Therefore, we have to trust the prophets in this regard. And they are the most upright of people. They are trusted even before they become recipients of divine revelation. They are trusted by their communities. So after receiving that, they are even more worthy of our complete trust and obedience. So therefore, they are the experts. Just like we have experts in this world, the doctors and the scientists, they are the experts of the other unseen world. And it is only, when we don't have yaqeen, belief, and submission towards them that we're going to reject them. And there's going to be atheism or disbelief. Now, the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, belief in establishing the salah, paying the zakah, and then believing in the akhirah, believing in the hereafter. Okay. Now this is something you cannot possibly accept anything in the Quran if you don't believe in the akhirah. It would not make sense to live your life according to this specific code. You have to do specific things every day, 5 times a day. You have to go to a specific place, once in your lifetime, and do very specific things in the Hajj. And there's a certain way that you have to fast. There's no way that any of this would make any sense if there's no hereafter, if there's no akhirah, right? So belief in the akhirah, that's why yuqinu, they are completely certain of the hereafter. So if you have any doubt about an afterlife, you will not be able to live the Qur'an the way that it has to be lived, the life that the Qur'an has prescribed. It's just not possible. Okay, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا سَوَاءٌ عَلَيْهِمْ أَأَنذَرْتَهُمْ أَمْ لَمْ تُنذِرْهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ, right? For those who disbelieve, those who have rejected the truth, it is the same whether you warn them or warn them not, they will not believe. Why? Because if they've rejected these basic things, it's falling on deaf ears. It's like talking to the wall. There's no receptivity. Why? Because it's the reception is not there because these beliefs are not there. These basic beliefs that are prerequisites for faith, they're missing. Therefore, there can be no guidance, no acceptance. ختم الله على قلوبهم وعلى سمعهم وعلى أبصارهم غشاوة ولهم عذاب عظيم. Allah has sealed their hearts and their hearing, and a covering has fallen over their eyes. They deserve severe punishment. Now, it's very important for us to understand these verses properly. There are a lot of verses or various verses in the Qur'an would say, and then Allah led them astray, or then Allah covered their hearts and sealed their hearts. And a lot of people, Muslims, have asked me this question, how is it their fault if Allah has led them astray or covered their ears and sealed their hearing? How can they be punished after Allah has done that to them? And it's explicitly in the Qur'an, like the verse I just read to you. Here you have to understand that there is a process, a divine process that is in place. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls to guidance, if that call is accepted, the acceptance or rejection is in the hands of the person. This is the meaning of free will. If we don't have the choice of accepting or rejecting, then we don't have free will. And then this whole guidance and revelation and sending prophets will become meaningless. If we were forced to believe or we were forced to disbelieve. In either case, this whole process and this meticulous detail and care of sending prophets and revelation, instruction, and afterlife, all this would become meaningless if we did not have the opportunity, the capacity to choose. The fact that we have been given divine will means that once the guidance comes to us, once a command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes to us, anything that we find difficult to obey as Muslims, it doesn't have to be that you're non-Muslim and you're being invited to faith. It could be you're Muslim and you're being invited to do something that is fard, or stop doing something that is haram, right? When a certain command comes to you, there are two ways that you can react. You can either accept or reject, right? Now, if you accept the guidance that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is a result or an impact or an effect. There's an effect of that on your heart. And similarly, if you reject the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's also an effect that then takes place and impacts your heart. If you accept the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what does Allah do? He opens your heart to Islam. He makes it easier for you to follow the divine guidance. He makes Iman beautiful to you and beautiful to your heart. And this is how Islam becomes easy and the instructions and the commandments become easy. If you reject Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His commands, there's also something that happens. What is that? The rejection first initiated from you, right? From the person. Then the result of that is that your heart is going to become sealed and that there's going to be a covering on your ears. But that will not happen until you reject. So the first reaction, depending on your reaction to divine guidance, there's going to be an impact, an effect that will then occur. So it's really, who is really responsible for this result? It's really the person themselves. If they're accepting, Allah is going to open their heart. If they're rejecting, then this covering will fall over their hearts. Same thing you have in other surahs of the Qur'an. فَلَمَّا أَزَاغُوا أَزَاغُ اللَّهُ قُلُوبَهُم. When they turned away, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala caused their hearts to turn away. So never think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself chooses who to put coverings on or seal their hearts or lead them astray. He never does that until the person, him or herself, chooses disbelief, chooses to reject. And only then you will have this. So this is really important to understand because people will ask you about this and make it a point of debate. And it's really very, we cannot attribute injustice to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is just. And it is not possible that He would do something that would cause us to lose our free will and not have the power to choose the deen or reject. La ikraha fi deen. You'll also see that also in the surah, that there is no compulsion in religion. And part of that is having free will. So there are many proofs you can give. Anyway, we have to move on. Okay, we did these verses. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن يَقُولُ. Okay, now here we're going to go into the verses that talk about the three different categories of people, right? We're going to talk about a group of people that believe, a group of people that has disbelieved, and then something in between. Then they're the most complex group. The most verses are attributed to them, to the hypocrites. ومن الناس من يقول آمنا بالله وباليوم الآخر وما هم بمؤمنين. For the sake of speeding it up, I don't like to do this, but I'm going to just read the English, otherwise we'll never finish. There are some who say we believe in Allah and in the last day, while in fact they do not believe. They are trying to deceive Allah and those who believe, but they do not realize that in truth they are only deceiving themselves. There is a disease in their hearts. And Allah has intensified their disease. Okay, so here we're talking about the hypocrites from verse 8 and onwards. All right, in the beginning we talked about the people that believe, what the muttaqeen, what are their characteristics. Okay, we've talked about them, and then in verse number 6 we talked about the kuffar, the disbelievers, right? In verses 6 and 7. Only 2 verses. The case of the disbeliever is very simple. He has rejected the truth, so there will be no impact on your calling them to guidance or not. Now the most complex category of people are the munafiqeen, who say one thing but mean another, who are expressing one reality but have something else far more hideous hidden inside. So they're saying we believe, but they do not believe. What is their purpose? To deceive Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the believers. But in fact, they're only deceiving themselves, and they have disease in their heart, right? And because of this disease, because of this attitude that they have adopted, what is the reaction? فَزَادَهُمُ اللَّهُ مَرَضًا. Allah has increased their disease. So because of the perverse attitude that they themselves first really chose to adopt, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intensified or increased their disease because of the hypocrisy, okay? Because of the hypocrisy. A painful punishment awaits them, for they are lying. Whenever they are told, do not spread mischief on the earth, they say, why? We indeed are the ones who set things right. They are the mischief makers, but they do not realize it. Whenever they are told, believe as others believe, they answer, shall we believe as the fools have believed? Indeed, it is they who are the fools, but they are not aware of it. Okay, so again, they have this concept of self-righteousness, right? This is the self-righteousness phenomena, where they're told, don't spread mischief on the earth. We're the ones who set things right. This is their reactions. You know, we're the peacemakers. We're not the troublemakers, right? So these are some of the characteristics that we want to make sure we don't fall into adopting. Self-righteous behavior. When someone corrects us, we're like, oh, alhamdulillah, it's not me that does this. You know, sometimes all of us fall into this. It's natural to get defensive, but then you don't want to be at a point where we're mimicking hypocritical behavior. When they meet the believers, they say we believe, but when they meet their evil companions, they say, surely we are with you, we are merely jesting. Allah jests with them, leaving them to wander blindly on in their rebellion. These are the ones who have purchased error in exchange for guidance. This bargain has brought them no profit, and certainly they are not on the right way. Okay, so here what do we see? The case of the disbeliever versus the case of the muttaqi, right? Complete, total opposites. They're like they're antonyms of each other. They're opposites of each other. The same book that is a guidance for the believer becomes a source of misguidance for the kafir, right? Now, so you see the total receptivity of the believer versus, and contrast that with the total unreceptivity of the disbeliever. Now, again, the hypocrites, talking about the hypocrites, it is because of something that was in their hearts, that the perversion in their hearts that caused Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase their misguidance, okay, to increase that disease. Allah is increasing their disease all the more. He does not, note, He does not punish their hypocrisy immediately. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never punishes immediately, okay? The hypocrisy is there from the munafiqun, but Allah did not punish them immediately for their hypocrisy. He gives them respite. And how do we know that? Because here they are talking to other hypocrites, saying, believe, when they're told, believe as others believe, shall we believe as the fools have believed? This is their opinion of the mu'mineen. Their opinion of the believers, that they think of them as lowly. They think of them as fools, as foolish people. But in fact, they are foolish in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And out of the mercy of Allah, He doesn't take them to task immediately. But if you look at the Qur'an, every time Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives these kinds of people respite, it's only perfecting the hujjah against them. It's only perfecting Allah's proofs against them, which are going to testify against them on the Day of Judgment. And this is going to be something that is perfecting Allah's argument, perfecting His hujjah. So the respite that they receive is not going to be good for them at the end, although they think that because of that, they are the ones that are on guidance. They are the ones that are better than the believers. Okay, now here the word shaitan is mentioned in verse number 14. Shayateen is mentioned, right? This is plural of shaitan. Normally in the Qur'an, when the word shayateen is used, it's referred to the devils among the jinns. Okay, it's referred to usually among the devils among the jinns. However, it can also include the shayateen among the human beings. Okay, so you can also have it's also used for human devils. So it's used both for jinn devils and for human devils as well. So it's used for both. But mostly in the Quran, when you find the word shayateen in its plural form, plural of shaitan, it usually refers to the jinn, the devils among the jinns. Okay, here of course, who is it referring to? It's referring to the Arab chiefs. Here, these verses, talking about the shayateen, talking about the hypocrites, it's referring to those Arab chiefs who were the munafiqeen, who were the most bitter enemies of Islam at that time. Now, if you look at verse 15, Allah يستهزئ بهم ويمدهم في طغيانهم يعمهون. Allah leaves them to wander blindly on in the rebellion. This is an allusion to the respite, that Allah is leaving them. They can wander on blindly in their rebellion. This is a degrading, terrifying end. Left wandering heedlessly without any direction. You know, this is, subhanAllah, Sayyid Qutb mentions, what a degrading, terrifying end. Left wandering heedlessly without direction till God picks them up again like feeble mice walking unawares into a trap. This is the true irony of their situation, which made their mockery of the unbelievers even more petty and ignoble. Okay, so really they are the ones that are going towards a horrible end, yet they don't realize it. So here, verse 17, they are like him who kindled a fire, and when it lit up all around him, Allah took away the light of their perception and left them in utter darkness where they can see nothing. Okay, here's a parable that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts forth about the people that are rejecting the guidance. This parable in verse 17 is when it's talking about a light. When they're like him who kindled a fire, and when it lit up all around him, this fire or this light, this is the light of Islam that the Prophet ﷺ spread. Okay, this is the tafsir of the parable of verse 17, is when the Prophet ﷺ spread the light of Islam that was all around them. Those people who were able to use their mind properly, their heart properly, that were following, their faculties were following the fitrah, they were able to distinguish right from wrong, okay, and they followed the guidance. But what did the hypocrites do? Because they were, after the dunya, blinded by self-interest, didn't want to lose their position, their status, whatever it is that they wanted, they couldn't see this light. So what happened? They preferred the dunya over akhirah. They did not see this light, even though it was all around them. The Prophet ﷺ and his guidance, the Qur'an, the verses. What happened? Allah took away that light of perception and left them in utter darkness where they can see nothing. Okay, so Allah took away the light from their eyes only after they themselves chose to go astray. Then they were allowed to go astray. After they made that choice, then they were not forced to believe. So this first parable is for those who did not believe in Islam. Now the second, the kuffar, those who outright rejected. Now look at the next parable. There are two parables here, right? Look at parable number 18. Okay, well, in finishing up the first category, they are deaf, they are dumb, they are blind, they will never return. Now verse 19 gives us a second kind of parable, and this reflects a second group of people, which are the munafiqeen. Or they are like those who encounter a violent rainstorm from the sky, accompanied by pitch dark clouds, thunderclaps, and flashes of lightning. On hearing thunderclaps, they thrust their fingers into their ears in fear of death. Allah encompasses these deniers of truth. Now this second parable is for those that did not outright reject, but they were plagued by doubt, by suspicion. They weren't sure. When it lit up around them, when believers had victories, they would walk a little bit forward. And when, things did not seem to be going in their favor, they would stop. Exactly the parable that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says here in verse 20. It is as if the lightning would snatch their sight whenever it gleams a while. Whenever things look good in the Muslim community, whenever things were serving their interest, they would be with the Muslims. Oh yes, we are with you. That's exactly what you see here in this parable. Whenever it gleams a while, for them they walk a little. And when darkness covers them, they halt, they stop. And whenever things look like they're going bad, the Muslims are about to lose this battle, we're not getting everything that we thought we were going to get by being with them, they would stop. So you see that they were really serving their own interests. Okay, this is because of the doubt, the suspicion, the lack of iman that they had. So here the rainfall in this example stands for Islam, which showered upon them like a blessing. And the darkness, the thunder, the lightning, this is for the obstacles that come in the way, the inevitable obstacles that come in the way once you accept Islam for the believers. And when the believers were those that overcame those obstacles and did not let them become an excuse, whereas the munafiqeen were those who made the obstacles the reason for their hypocrisy, the reason for leaving that path and not walking on it. So the thunder and lightning are those inevitable obstacles that come in the way. When the path eased a little bit, they walked somewhat on the path, right? They would go to the masjid. The munafiqeen were known to come to the masjid and pray. They would even come for Fajr, which is such a difficult prayer. They would even come for Fajr and Isha. So it's not that they weren't doing the outward acts. They took great pains to actually perform the outward acts of Islam to be considered among the fold of the Muslims, yet they were hiding something else underneath. So when difficulties would come or a command and suit their self-interest, they would just stand there bewildered, not knowing what to do. So had Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted, He could have taken away their sight, He could have taken away their hearing, as happened in the case of the first group of people, which is the spiritual hearing and sight that was taken away. So they were disbelievers altogether. But here these people are being given respite. And again, this is because the munafiqeen, and when Allah gives respite, it's only that it means that they're going to be punished later, because they don't come back to the guidance. These people that are given respite continue on in the path of misguidance, and then they are punished in the most horrible way, if not in this world, because one of the things that was given to the Ummah of Muhammad ﷺ is that they would not be destroyed, or rather the people in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, Allah did not destroy them in the presence of His Prophet as the previous nations were destroyed. Okay, the various opponents of Islam were killed throughout the various battles. However, the entire adab that overtook nations that rejected their prophets, alhamdulillah, the Prophet ﷺ did not have to face that. The people believed. The majority of the people believed and alhamdulillah accepted Islam in throngs. However, these people, they met their end in different ways, different battles, and became a huge sign, ibra for the people that were after them. So if Allah had so willed, He could indeed take away their hearing and their sight. Surely Allah is all powerful, and this is why the munafiqeen, the most complex of the three groups, the muttaqeen, the kuffar, and the munafiqeen, these three categories have been mentioned. You only have a couple verses devoted to the first two groups, right? 3-4 verses for the believers, 2 verses for the kuffar, and then most number of verses for the munafiqeen. They are the worst punished in the fire of hell. And the munafiqeen fi ad-dark al-asfal. The munafiqeen are in the lowest pit of the fire of hell, even worse off than the kuffar, because of this perverse attitude that they adopted. This is the most dangerous type of enemy, is the one that pretends to be a friend. And this is the role that the munafiqeen were playing in Medina. When they would meet the believers, they would say, "We are with you." And then when they would go away to their people, they would say, "Indeed, we're actually really with you. We're just making fun of them." Okay, so this is something that we have to be very careful these days in our masajid. People feigning to be well-wishers of the Muslims, of the Muslim community, and inside are really hiding something else. And a lot of Muslim communities have suffered because of this attitude of many people, and not being able to recognize people for who they are. Okay, let's go on to the next part, verse 21. O mankind, serve your Lord who has created you as well as those before you, so that you are saved. Now in the Arabic it's a lot more eloquent. I didn't even feel the translation at all. يا أيها الناس اعبدوا ربكم الذي خلقكم والذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. Again, you have the theme of taqwa. This is the first command, chronological command in the Qur'an. From Al-Fatiha up to this point, there have been no commands given. This is the first command given in the Qur'an. And what is this command? It's to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ya ayyuhan nasu u'budu rabbakum. Now notice it doesn't say all Muslims worship your Lord, right? It didn't say all Muslims worship your Lord. It just said, O mankind, O people. worship your Lord, the Lord that created you and those before you, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. And there's a purpose of the worship, okay? There's a purpose of that worship, and that purpose is to attain taqwa, right? This is the reason why you're going to have all these various ibadat mandated in the surah, right? It's because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to attain piety. He wants us to attain taqwa. This is why you have the salah, this is why you have the siyam, the hajj. They don't mean anything if a person does not develop this taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And here you see the purpose of ibadah outlined right here in this surah. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. So that you may achieve taqwa. And this is something we have to realize, that Allah has said to everyone here to worship Allah. He didn't say, oh Jews or Muslims or Christians. He said, Ya ayyuhan nasu u'budu rabbakum. This implies there is a basic human need to worship the Creator. There's this basic need, just like hunger and thirst have to be quenched. And the same way, there's a deep spiritual longing within the human being. As long as the fitrah has not been corrupted, there will be this desire to worship and to know the one that created you. Okay, and the only way that it can be fulfilled is through the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which we could not have figured out on our own. There's no way that a person can figure out on their own how to pray. No one can come up with that formula. How to pray, how many times it's going to be, how many rakahs is it going to be, what am I going to say? No one can come up with that. The ibadah of Sawm, the hajj, and all the rites, it can only be revealed. And even if you can make up some things, like, there are chants and mantras that people make up. If you make up those things on your own, you will never know if it's pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if it's acceptable to Him. The only thing we know is going to be accepted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is going to be pleasing to Him, and is going to fulfill this basic human need that the fitrah of every human being is upon, is if the ibadah, the way to do it, is divinely revealed. It comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why in ibadah we have the attitude of tawqif. In ibadah we have the attitude of tawqif. Tawqif means we stop. Waqaf, it comes from waqaf, which means to stop. Yani, we stop at what was divinely revealed. We don't go beyond it, and we don't invent it on our own. Okay? In mu'amalat, we have a lot of flexibility in transactions and business, and how to build something, and how to what field to go in. We have a lot of flexibility. But in ibadat, we have no flexibility. We cannot come up with things on our own, otherwise they will fall into bid'ah. And this is actually how people fall into bid'ah, is when they come up with practices that were not done by the Prophet ﷺ, not introduced by him, but rather made up and invented. This is the essence, this is the birth of bid'ah. So we need to cling to those ibadat that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prescribed. And here, after describing the worst category of people, which were the hypocrites, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes us to that which will make us into the best type of people, the most upright type of people, which is through His pure ibadah, the ibadah that He has mandated for all of us. This is what makes us pure, upright people, acceptable and pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is when we worship Him according to His conditions, not according to our conditions. And why should we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? If a person, of course, we don't, alhamdulillah, question this, but if a person needs a logical proof, or needs a reason, a logical reason, a rational reason to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just look at the verses that come after it. Allah Himself says, this is the reason you should be worshipping Him. الَّذِي جَعَلَ لَكُمُ الْأَرْضَ فِرَاشًا وَالسَّمَاءَ بِنَاءً وَأَنزَلَ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً فَأَخْرَجَ بِهِ مِنَ الثَّمَرَاتِ رِزْقًا لَكُمْ فَلَا تَجْعَلُوا لِلَّهِ أَنْدَادًا وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. Which means it is He, and it is Allah, who has made the earth a resting place for you, and the sky a canopy, and sent down water from above, wherewith He brought forth fruits for your sustenance. Do not then set up rivals to Allah when you know the truth. The only one who is worthy of your worship is the one who created everything that you see around you for you. He is the one who created the earth. He made it a resting place for you. He made it a means of comfort for you. He caused the soil in it to bear fruit. If it didn't, how could we eat? If He didn't make the soil fertile, and if it was barren, and there are some parts of the earth that are barren, that don't give forth any vegetation, there's no irrigation, there's no way that we can cause that earth to become fertile if Allah has made it barren. So the fact that Allah caused so much of the earth to be fertile, and He made the sky, He mentions, a canopy, right? The sky, subhanAllah, it's such an amazing creation of Allah that even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself says in the Qur'an that the khalq, or the creation of the skies, is greater than the creation of the human being. It's greater than the creation of humankind, this creation of the skies and the heavens. If we study the skies, we are deeply dependent. Our existence is deeply dependent on the sky and everything that comes from it. What do we have in the sky? We have the sun. Life is not possible without the sun. And the sun has to be exactly in the position that it is in the sky for us to benefit from it. If it was a little bit closer, everything would burn and there could be no life. And if it was a little bit farther, everything would freeze and nothing could survive. So subhanAllah, and what else comes from the sky? Rain. Rain descends from the sky. Water, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that وَجَعَلْنَا مِنَ الْمَاءِ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ حَيٍّ أَفَلَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. In Surah Al-Anbiya, Allah says that we created everything from water. Okay? It's not possible. 70% of the earth is water, right? Oceans. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created everything from water. The origin of the human being is from water. The stay within the womb is primarily in a sack of water. So subhanAllah, water, life is impossible without water, and this again comes from the sky. So we're deeply dependent on the heavens and the skies, the heat, the light, the gravity, the stars, the planet. Without gravity, subhanAllah, there'd be chaos. There'd be chaos in this world. So the fact that He created the earth and the sky for us with all these things that ensure our continued existence is reason enough to worship Him out of gratitude. This is why right after the first command, Ya ayyuhan nasu u'budu rabbakum, O mankind, worship your Lord, He tells us why we should worship Him, what He has done for us. And that gratitude should then prompt us to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just for this awesome creation of the sky and the earth and the water that then descends from it. So, and of course, when Allah is the sole creator of all of these things, how can we worship anyone other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How can people then commit shirk? And this was especially relevant to the mushrikeen of Arabia because they believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They didn't disbelieve in Allah. It's just that they had set up other partners with Him, right? Other gods, other false gods. They believed that Allah was the creator of the heavens and the earth, that He was the one who had created them, had made them. And they attributed many things to Allah's powers. But when it came to ascribing partners, they were the ones who had over 300 idols in the Kaaba. They had invented others with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is something that Allah does not accept. The only sin that He does not forgive is the sin of shirk. So here, from a completely logical standpoint, when you acknowledge Allah is the creator, the sole creator of everything, the only creator of everything, how can you worship other than Him? Now, for us, alhamdulillah, the Prophet ﷺ told us, and we all know, we don't fear the worship of idols. We don't have that threat of that type of shirk in our lives. However, there are other types of shirk. And this is what we have to be aware of. And all of us that have taken classes on Tawheed and Aqidah are aware of some of these types of shirk. Shirk is anything that interferes alongside or interferes with our ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anything else that becomes a partner in our worship of Allah. And Allah's worship is not just through salah, because of course we will never bow before an idol. But there are also worships of the heart. For example, tawakkul, trusting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is a worship of the heart. Sabr, patience, is a worship of the heart. Raja, hoping in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is a worship of the heart. So there are certain ibadat that are done by the heart, they cannot be done by the body. Okay? And it is in these that we are very susceptible to shirk. And in fact, this is the kind of shirk that Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anh, the great mufassir, the great sahabi radiallahu anh, he warned us about shirk. Placing your hopes and your fears in other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, believing that anything other than Him can bring about benefit or harm. These are subtle forms of shirk, what that all of us can easily fall into without even realizing. And Abdullah bin Abbas radiallahu anh, he said, setting up equals to God is a subtle form of shirk. It is more subtle. Now he's talking about the shirk that we today are susceptible to. Hope in our hopes and our fears, in our belief of other people bring us benefit or harm. This is the type he is referring to. It is more subtle than an ant stealthily walking on a smooth black surface in the thick of darkness. It is when someone swears by something other than the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or believes that, like it has superstitious beliefs. Like people in the old days used to think that if you put a dog or a duck in your house, this would keep the thieves away. This was a superstition at the time. So he refers to this. It is when someone swears. So he's saying this is shirk. What is shirk? When someone swears by something other than the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How many times do we hear this in our culture? People swearing by other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have this very common in our culture when people will say, oh, I swear by you. Oh, I swear by my mother. I swear by my grandfather's grave. This is strange things like that. But swearing by other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's a form of shirk. Believing that dogs or ducks keep the thief away. Believing in anything other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, preventing harm. What does this show? Believing that something other than Allah can prevent harm or give us benefit. It is when someone says by the will of God and the will of man, or were it not for God and you. If it weren't for God and you, I wouldn't have been able to do this. So this falls into shirk, believing that Allah, along with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, someone else is also responsible for can also provide us some type of benefit. This is something that we have to be really, really careful of doing, and inshallah not fall into. It is also reported that once a man came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, whatever you and God will. Whatever you will and whatever God wills. He put the Prophet ﷺ along with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the Prophet, what was his reaction? He said, do you take me as an equal to God? So there's a difference between thanking people for their goodness, or the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made some people a means of our benefit. There's a difference between that and then thinking that I cannot survive without this person. There's a difference between those two things. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Razaq. He is the provider. So ultimately we have to believe that even if this person is not there, Allah will give me the means to sustain myself. Okay, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us one means at one time, and He can change these means for me as He wills. But my hope, my expectation, the one that can bring me benefit or protect me from harm, is not some amulet or some superstitious belief. Rather, it is only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I think our older generation had a harder time with this concept than we did. They were exposed to a lot of cultural superstitions that we see some remnants of still. And inshallah, this is something we can educate our families about, inshallah, because it is as serious as shirk. This is why we have to, inshallah, be aware of this. Okay, moving on to the next part. If you are in any doubt, verse 23, whether it is we who have revealed this book to our servant, then produce just a surah like it, and call all your supporters and seek in it the support of all others save Allah, except Allah. Accomplish this if you are truthful. Okay, this is the grand challenge, the great challenge that is repeated several times in the Qur'an, that is still valid, which means it is still, if someone wants to produce something like the Qur'an, it was not just for the time of the Prophet ﷺ. The challenge is still open. Someone can still today try to attempt to produce something like the Qur'an, and they will not be able to do it. And attempts have been made, and they were laughed at by the people, as I had told you earlier. And this is something that no one has been able to do for over 1400 years. So this is something, subhanAllah, amazing. And if you look at the way that the challenge is given, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِن كُنْتُمْ فِي رَيْبٍ مِّمَّا نَزَلْنَا عَلَىٰ عَبْدِنَا, that if you are in doubt about what we have revealed upon our servant, Abd, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala very lovingly calls the Prophet when he gives him the most loving, the most honorific title in the Quran. What does he call him? He calls him Abdina, our servant. This is the greatest, grandest title that a person can have, to be the slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yani to be truly His slave. And so this is something that inshallah we want to aspire for. And you will see this in various places in the Quran. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lovingly refers to the Prophet, He calls him His slave, the highest honorary title a person can attain. Now, again, the great challenge is given in this verse, number 23, which was illustrated in the beginning of the surah with those huruf al-muqatta'a, right? Which I had told you about, that alif lam mim, these various letters that the Quran begins with, these various letters that the Quran begins with, right? It is saying that the Quran is made up of these very letters, that yet you are unable to use these letters to produce anything like the Quran. Now, why is this challenge so powerful, especially at that time? It is because the reason why this challenge is so powerful and is a clear proof when they failed to bring forth anything like the Qur'an, why it's a clear proof of the divinity of the Qur'an, is because the Arabs in 7th century Arabia, when the Prophet ﷺ came to them, had reached the pinnacle of the Arabic language. The richest tradition, the most fasih, the most eloquent language of the Arabs was at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. There was a rich oral tradition at that time. In fact, people used to compete with each other in seeing who has the most beautiful verses of poetry. And this was a source of pride for them. They would hang their poetry. The best poetry would be selected. The 7 best pieces would be hung at the Kaaba, right? The Salam al-Laqat, you probably heard of them, right? And the finest piece of poetry, and they would, recite the poetry and to each other. This was something that they took pride in, that no one has the language that we have now been able to develop. So this rich oral tradition, the fact that the Arabic language had reached its linguistic peak, and in spite of the fact that they had complete mastery in the field, they were still unable to produce anything like the Qur'an, unable to bring meet this challenge. This is why it was clear that this task was superhuman. This task was superhuman. It could not be done. It was beyond the realm of human ability to bring forth anything like the Qur'an. And this is a proof of it being from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a proof of it being from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is why in the next verse, but if you fail to do this, and you will most certainly fail, then fear the fire whose fuel is men and stones, and which has been prepared for those who deny the truth. In the Arabic, if you look at verse number 24, it says, فَإِلَّمْ تَفْعَلُوا وَلَنْ تَفْعَلُوا. Lan is the absolute strong negation of the possibility of ever being able to do this act. Lan taf'alu. Never, ever, ever. You will never, ever be able to do this. That's the sigha, the form that is used in the verse in Arabic. So subhanallah, the fact that it's the fact that no one will be able to do this is expressed with such certainty. This shows that it is only from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The task is superhuman. It cannot be done. However, even after this realization that you are not able to produce anything like the Qur'an, if you still reject, then what can you look forward to? The fire whose fuel is men and stones. If even after this obvious inability to imitate the Qur'an, which is a proof that it's from Allah, and you know it's from Allah now, because you can't produce anything like it, even though you were at the peak of your oral tradition, even after this, you will reject the Qur'an, you will still disbelieve, then you deserve nothing except the fire that is fueled by human beings and stones. What does it mean it's fueled by it? Yani it increases with the entry of human beings. This is just like if you want to increase a fire, you put more wood in it. The wood of the fire of hell is human beings. The more people we seek Allah's refuge, Allahumma ajirna min an-nar. 7 times after Fajr and Maghrib, Allahumma ajirna min an-nar. Allah, we seek refuge from the fire, which is 70 times hotter than the fire of this world. We can't even bear to have a little flame touch us for a moment. And some of the Salaf, when they would be tempted to commit a sin or to become lax in the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they would go and touch a little bit of the fire with their finger to remind themselves that you want to commit this haram, you want to do this bad deed, first check if you're able to bear the fire. If you can handle this fire, if you can bear to be burnt by it, then okay, go ahead, commit the deed, commit the haram. This is how they would remind themselves and stop themselves from doing haram or becoming lax. So, and also the fact that the stones are mentioned here. It is said, some of the Mufassirin have said that the stones here are the idols that they used to worship. They will be thrown in the fire of hell with them. So those are the stones that are going to be along with the people. Or some say that just like their stones, their hearts rather had become hard like stones, that even after this obvious fact that the Qur'an is from Allah, they still rejected it. Their hearts were like stones, so that's why stones are going to be thrown in them to symbolize that, this is how you used to act. You used to act like stones, like you were heartless. So this is why these are also being thrown along with you in the fire of hell. So Allahu Alam, those are the various interpretations that are given. Going on to the next verse, O Prophet, announce glad tidings to those who believe in this book. Inshallah, we're going to stop in about 10 minutes or so. The adhan is going to go off. So, inshallah, just be patient for about 10 more minutes. O Prophet, announce glad tidings to those who believe in this book and do righteous deeds in accordance with its teachings, that for them are gardens beneath which rivers flow. Their fruits will have such resemblance to those of the earth that whenever they will be provided with those fruits, they will say, it was this which was granted to us on earth before. For them there shall be pure spouses, and there they shall abide forever. Verse 25, total, complete contrasting picture to the previous picture of hell and stones and fire. Right? Here is the beautiful picture of bliss painted for the believers. Those who accepted the guidance, those who rejected the truth, who submitted to the fact that we of course cannot produce anything like the Qur'an. It is from Allah, we submit, we obey. For them there is Jannah, paradise, gardens, fruits. And here, the fruits, subhanAllah, it's a very interesting thing. I don't have this mentioned anywhere else in the Qur'an with regards to the fruits, which is that utubihi mutashabiha, right? That they are given fruits that are familiar to them. So there's this element of the familiar, which means that when, inshallah, may Allah make us among the believers that receive these fruits, when we receive these fruits, inshallah, we're going to feel like we had experienced them somewhere else before. There's like some lingering memory in our minds that we've experienced these or seen these somewhere before, okay? This is what is mentioned here. Utubihi mutashabiha. They've been given fruits that they had some resemblance to those fruits on earth, right? But when you will taste them, their taste and enjoyment will be a complete surprise, will be completely unfamiliar. So there's this experience of the familiar in our lingering memory somewhere, yet the taste will be a completely new experience, a complete surprise. And you know, the element of surprise always adds to the experience of pleasure. When you're having a really good time, but then there's a really good surprise, it just increases the enjoyment so much more because you weren't expecting it, and if it's a good surprise, right? So this is, subhanAllah, the perfection of Allah's reward. Is not only is it beautiful, and there's something familiar which makes you comfortable, it makes you, remember something, but also there's that element of surprise which will enhance the enjoyment. So everything in Jannah, subhanAllah, everything about Jannah is an enhancing, increasingly, exponentially increasing experience of pleasure. The pleasure is even of multiple levels. It's not just, okay, the fruit tastes good. No, it's something, I've seen this before somewhere. It makes it intriguing, right? Increases your interest, makes it more enjoyable. Then the taste is something you will never have tasted before, that you can never expect it to taste like that, subhanAllah. So then subhanAllah, it is really something worth working very hard for, subhanAllah. Behold, Allah is not ashamed to propound the parable of a gnat. Okay, here it says ba'uda, right, like a mosquito, or even of something more lowly. On hearing these parables, the believers know that it is the truth from their Lord, while those bent on denying the truth say, what does Allah mean by these parables? That He causes many to go astray, just as He directs many to go the right way. Now here, the discourse changes to something else, right? Here, what is happening in verse 26, if you haven't read Tafseer before, you're confused, right? What is Allah talking about here? The disbelievers used to raise various objections against the Qur'an. One of their objections was, what kind of book is this? It talks about the ant, the spider, the mosquito. Like, what is that, So here, it was just to downplay, belittle the importance of the Qur'an, that, what kind of book is this that it talks about these things? But Allah is not ashamed to give examples of these things, or even something more lowly than this. And because when it's from Allah, the people that believe will submit to it and accept it. And the people that will disbelieve, and even mention of greater things, right? These are not the only things that are mentioned in the Qur'an. Great realities are mentioned in the Qur'an. Great stories of great prophets have been mentioned in the Qur'an. Did that become a source of guidance for the disbelievers? No, they did not. The Prophet ﷺ was among them. Did he become a source of guidance for those who chose to disbelieve? He did not. Therefore, people who reject small things, that's just an excuse, because they're at the same time rejecting greater things. So, subhanAllah, that is not something that should turn anyone off or turn anyone away that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses to give examples of insignificant things. And if you study insignificant things, you will realize how significant they really are. What a, subhanAllah, tremendous role every creature has to play. Yesterday we were, in subhanAllah, looking at the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the New England Aquarium, right? And it is unbelievable what Allah has created. We have been to so many aquariums, okay, with our children, and every aquarium we find something new, subhanAllah. We saw this sea dragon that I have never seen before, and it just made you want to cry, just looking at that Allah created even this. And I can show you a picture of it afterwards, inshallah, if you're interested in seeing it. I have one. It's like half seahorse and half plant. The body of it is pink. It's the size of an exact miniature fantasy sea creature, and it has leaves coming out of it with branches, beautiful, like green, perfect, like roundish leaves coming out of it, subhanAllah. And that has a role in creation, the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's one of the rare 3 species in the world, but Allah created it, and it's still here. For however long Allah has destined it to be here. Every creature, subhanAllah, has a role to play, and there's something that we can learn from every creature. And in fact, we saw a school of fish, and it is said that when they travel together, it's amazing. That's what a school is, right? A large group of fish. And they travel like by the hundreds. And they were telling us the benefits of a schooling. And one of the benefits was that they become less vulnerable to being preyed upon by predators when they're in a large group. SubhanAllah. That's exactly what the Prophet ﷺ told us, right? That the shaitan preys upon the lone sheep, right? Yani, when you're alone, when you're not with the group of believers, your strength is diminished. Your spiritual strength is diminished. Your spiritual vigor is compromised. So always surround yourself with a group. Always be in a group, that there's barakah in a group. That's why the salah is in jama'ah, right? The hajj is a communal, international festival of ibadah, right? So subhanAllah, there's so many things, and subhanAllah, if you look at the fish, no matter how many there are, hundreds or several hundreds, they will never collide into each other. Never will one fish collide into the other fish. And how are they able to pull that off? Because they're so close to each other, and there's so many of them, and they're all going at a certain speed. They said there's a lateral sensor in the middle of their bodies that allows them to never collide into each other. SubhanAllah. Just like you have the planets, they will never collide into each other because of the orbit. So there is nothing insignificant about the most insignificant of creation. There's something that we can learn from everything. SubhanAllah. And I'll tell you about the electric eel later if you're interested. That was amazing as well. So here you see that it's people that if people want to reject faith, they will find an excuse to do so. And if people want to believe, there will be no obstacle big enough to prevent them. Just like we saw in the example of Asiya, the wife of Fir'aun. Who could be a greater obstacle than Fir'aun? One of the leaders of hell, literally. He will lead his people into hell. One of the worst people to walk this planet. He did not become an obstacle for Asiya, who was one of the leaders of the women of Jannah. One of the best women, of ever. So for believers, no obstacle is big enough, and for people who want to reject, no excuse is small enough. So you here will see these, same themes that are a source of light and guidance for the believers, are a source of misguidance for the disbelievers. And here, this is exactly what Allah is saying, that the believers submit to the parables, and hearing these parables, the believers know that it is the truth from their Lord. And those who deny will say, what does Allah mean by these parables? We don't understand. This doesn't make sense. And unfortunately, you hear a lot of Muslims say that about some commands in Islam. Recently, I go through this all the time. Our own family members, our own circle of friends, people we know, that doesn't make any sense. We should hold our tongues. If Allah has said this, if the Prophet ﷺ has commanded this, maybe we don't understand the wisdom. Maybe we don't know the hikmah behind it. Maybe we need to learn and find out. But never, ever, ever say, this doesn't make sense, if you know it's come from Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, we have a few more minutes before the adhan. Inshallah, we'll just finish up this section. He thereby causes to go astray only the transgressors. Okay, now remember all these verses about Allah causing people to go astray. Always remember them in the light of the discussion we had earlier. Okay, that it's only a natural result of the reaction that the person has, or aversion that the person shows to Allah's guidance. Okay, now who are these people that go astray by these same examples that are a source of guidance for the believers? And he thereby causes to go astray only the transgressors who break the covenant of Allah after its firm binding, and cut asunder what Allah has commanded to be joined, and spread mischief on the earth. They are the utter losers. So here you have the, another category of people that have these certain characteristics which will not benefit from these parables that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts forth. So here ahd is interesting in the Arabic language. الَّذِينَ يَنْقُضُونَ عَهْدَ اللَّهِ. Who are these people that go astray by what Allah provides as guidance? Those who break the ahd, the covenant of Allah with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is this covenant? It's translated as covenant or agreement. It is, in Arabic, it refers to those instructions that are issued by a ruler to his subjects. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's ahd, or his covenant with humanity, is to submit to him and to worship him alone. Okay, this is the ahd of the salah, right? Of worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, to the prayer, the one who establishes the prayer for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and for him alone, Allah's ahd with him then is that he will not burn him in the fire of hell. Okay, so there's a covenant, there's an agreement between humanity and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah, we worship him alone, set no partners in his worship, and then his ahd is that he will not burn us in the fire of hell. So people who break this covenant, of course, and then do all these various things, describing this group of fasiqeen, Allah has called them the fasiqeen, right? These are the people that will not be able to, they're not able to keep the covenant with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala after it was binding upon them. They cut, this can refer to cutting the ties of the womb as well. We're going to stop, inshallah, for the inshallah, we're going to continue from verse 28 tomorrow, inshallah. Subhanakallah bihamdika la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.